Hello? Hi, is this Bob? Speaking? Hi, Bob. My name's Adam. Adam Clark. I'm calling you because... Are you the one who works for that website? Paranormal one? Yes, that's me. I'm actually a freelancer, but I write for them quite a bit. They passed on this email that you sent to them this morning and asked me to give you a call. I was just reading through what you wrote. You mean the email about the woman, right? Yeah, that's the one. I was hoping that I could ask you a few questions about what you've been seeing lately. Would you be happy for me to use your answers as part of the article? Yeah? Suppose that's fine. But it's just... Well, I don't really know what an article's gonna do to help. Yeah, I understand. We get that a lot. Plenty of the people that I speak to aren't sure what the point is. You're not alone there. A lot of them contact us as a last resort. I think many of them have already called the police, and that's what I did. Called them the first night that it happened. Oh, you did? That was actually something that I was planning to ask, and what did they do? Not a damn thing. Came around and asked me a few questions, then fucked off again. Said there was no sign of a disturbance or forced entry. Nothing much they could do at all, apparently. You know what I said to them? I says, what the hell do I pay my taxes for if you can't even help me when I need you? A lot of good y'all are. They just told me to call back if I see her again. I know what they was really thinking, though. What's that? I'm full of shit. Just some lonely old nutcase making it all up. They didn't say it, but that's what they wanted to say. I could see it in their faces. That's why I didn't bother calling again, even when she did come back. So, let's start at the beginning. The first night that you saw her, did anything unusual happen that day? Anything unusual? No, I don't think so. Took Hector for a walk up the park. My dog, Hector is. Then I settled in and I watched my usual shows there. Matlock at 6 and then MASH at 7. Had dinner shortly after that. Pretty much what I do every day, to be honest. Nothing too exciting, but does me just fine. I guess I'm just too old for excitement. Okay, and you went to sleep at the usual time that night, right? Yeah, thereabouts. Usually sit in bed and browse on my phone for a bit, but messed up that night. So I spent a while trying to sort that out. Messed up? Wasn't a big deal. My son George, he lives in Australia, and he emailed me a photo of him and his wife at the beach. I opened it up and then the bloody thing just kept freezing. I don't know, just froze up on me. Spinning wheel of death, isn't that what they call it? Anyway, I managed to sort it out eventually by turning it off and on a few times. And I went to sleep thereafter. Must have been around 10:30 or so. And it says here in your email that all your doors and windows were locked, right? Oh, absolutely. There's one thing I'm sure of. I go around and I check them every night. Last thing I do before I settle in. Marge used to wind me up about being OCD. But I never thought that. I just like being careful, that's all that is. Okay. So can you describe what happened next? I'll try. I'm not sure I understand it myself, if I'm honest. I'll do my best. It started when I woke up. I don't tend to sleep too well nowadays. Back's been bad for years, and it often wakes me up during the night. Sometimes more than once. So waking up nothing's unusual for me, but this time I remember feeling wide awake. As if a noise had woken me up, even though I couldn't hear nothing when I opened my eyes. My bedroom was dark and quiet, so I rubbed my face and I leaned over to check the clock on my bed and, saw it was around 3:13. 3:13, you say? That's it. Same time every night. Just like I put in my email. Okay. So you saw the time, and then what? Well, I got this feeling that's sort of difficult to describe. I guess an inch, I suppose. The skin on my head and my back and my neck was crawling. I felt cold, too. Like a drought was blowing in through the windows. Only, it really wasn't. I knew that it wasn't, because all them windows were shut. So I was lying there trying to get back to sleep, but it wasn't easy. I couldn't get comfortable. After a while, I got to thinking that I maybe need to use the bathroom, and once the thought's in your head, you gotta get it out. So I sat up. My room was almost pitch black, with just a tiny bit of street light getting in through curtains. All gray, black shadows. So I reached over to get my glasses from the bedside table, and as I put them on, everything came into focus. She was standing there at the foot of my bed. A woman. Just standing there watching me. I couldn't see her face, but I could tell that she was looking my direction. Still as a statue. I remember that cold feeling spreading through my body when I saw her. You must have been terrified. Well, I'll tell you, I don't scare easily, son. I was scared then, yeah. Just about scared as I ever remember being in my life. I haven't felt that scared since the war. So what happened? Well, nothing at first. For a long time, I just sat there staring at her. And I guess I was in shock. She never moved. And the whole time, she never moved. Just stood in the same position. Her face in shadow. And eventually, I found a way to glance away, just for a second. I was trying to get my gun that's in the drawer of my bedside table. When I looked back, she was gone. Just disappeared right out of thin air. As if she'd never been there at all. So this strange woman, if you're going to ask whether she was just part of a dream or something, don't even bother. I know when I'm sleeping and when I'm awake. But I'll admit that it was the first thought that I had, though. Maybe I was just having a really bad nightmare. Maybe I was coming down with something. I tried to justify it to myself however I could. But I never believed it. I knew it was real. And I knew that she was real. I wasn't going to suggest that you were dreaming, Mr. Rickman. I was going to ask about the following nights. Did you say in your email that you've seen her 6 times now? That's right. If she's back there tonight, it'll be the 7th. Always the same time? 3:13, yes sir. Every night. And has anything been different on those other nights? Well, she gets closer. I'm sorry, what? A woman. Each night I've seen her, she gets a little closer to me. Closer to my bed. It's like that game that we played in school when we was kids. Where you have to turn your back and your friends sneak up when you're not looking. And have you seen her face? Yeah. Yes, I've seen her. Only once, though, last night. I'll tell you something now, son. I don't want to see her again. I don't ever want to look at that face again. That's why I sent the email, I think. Getting desperate now. Can you tell me what she looked like, Mr. Rickman? I don't... Anything you can tell me at all. The article will go up on our website, you see, and we have a very dedicated audience. People who know things like this. Any extra information that we can give them that might help identify the woman that's been visiting you. Oh! That shouldn't be too hard. I'm sorry? Identifying her. It's the easy part. And why's that? She don't have any eyes. Sorry? She ain't got any eyes, son. That's what I saw last night. She was close enough for me to see her face. In the place where her eyes should have been, there was nothing. It was all smooth.
That is a section of the transcript from my interview with Bob Rickman. It does go on a little longer than that, but I think that this section has all the most important bits. I should know, too, although I only interviewed Bob the day before yesterday. I've listened to that recording around a dozen times since. The thing is, I thought that this was going to be a simple enough job. A quick interview that I could transcribe and send straight off to my editor. Something that'd be online within a day or two. Only, now I'm not sure if the thing will even make it up online. Now I'm starting to think that I might have stumbled into the middle of something that I don't even understand. I received 3 emails from Bob after we finished our interview. The first came a few hours later, while I was in the middle of the transcription. I'd given Bob my email at the end of our call and told him to contact me if anything else came up. But I was still a little surprised to get an email from him so soon. It contained no subject line or text. It was just a JPEG attachment. A photo of something that I assumed was Bob, sitting in an armchair. Some old guy with glasses and thinning hair, smiling into the camera. I figured that he'd sent it to me to use as part of the article, and so I saved it to my desktop without giving it much thought. By that point, my MacBook was playing up a bit. I figured it had overheated or something because it kept crashing. So I decided to give up on transcribing for the night and head to bed. I saw the second email from Bob the next morning. Found it in my inbox when I was having breakfast. It had been sent to me a little before 4 a.m. I thought that it was odd in and itself, so I ignored my other emails and I clicked onto it. Saw that it contained a video attachment. Bob filming himself. That was my first thought when I opened the file. The first shot showed a dark and grainy view of a kitchen that I didn't recognize. The camera was focused on the oven, which had a little digital display clock. 3:10. I shuffled a little closer to my laptop despite only being half awake. And I felt the first twinge of excitement and just a tiny slither of fear, too. Bob had woken up in the night, and he decided to film his bedroom as the clock struck 3:13. That had to be it. He's going to try and record the woman. I stared at the screen, holding my breath as the camera turned away from the oven. It moved across the room and through a door, into a little corridor. It was very dark in Bob's house, and I struggled to make out what I was seeing. But then things got a little clearer when the camera entered the room at the end of the hallway. Bob's bedroom. It had to be. I could see a little window over to the left. The curtains were mostly drawn, but a slither of streetlight spilled in through the crack. It was just how Bob had described things in the interview. The camera continued across the room, moving in the direction of the bed. And then the screen juddered. The camera was facing the window, but partly across the room, it stopped. And the view shifted, turning slowly to show the double bed over by the wall. And I felt my entire body go cold. Someone was lying beneath the covers, the shadowy outline of a person. And as the camera moved towards them, my heartbeat picked up in my chest. The camera traced its way up to the shape of the person's body, pausing as it neared the head of the bed. And then it quickly tilted up to show their face. And I screamed. The person lying in the bed was Bob. He was dead. I knew that the minute that I saw him. Not because his chest was still, but because both of his eyes had been gouged out. And I stared at the screen in horror, trying to tell myself that it was a joke, just a prank that my editor had decided to play on me, but I knew that it wasn't. Although the room was dim, I could see Bob's face clearly enough to know that the ruined flesh where his eyes had been was no joke at all. And the last thing that happened before the film ended was the camera twisting to the left. It showed a view of Bob's bedside table and the digital clock that rested there. The time was 3:13. The rest of this story can be told quickly. I suppose if this were a horror movie, I'd have headed straight to Bob's house, gone out to investigate. But I hadn't, though. Instead, I spent all of yesterday in my flat, paralyzed with indecision, unsure of what to do next. I spent the next few hours sat in front of my laptop, staring at the screen and thinking, trying to get my head around what I had just watched. Had I really seen Bob lying dead in his flat? The same guy that I had been speaking to on the phone only a day before? Didn't seem possible. As I sat there, my mind felt like it was dividing in two. Part of me knew what I needed to do and believed it to be real. But the other part suddenly wasn't so sure. Doubts began to worm their way in. Maybe it was a joke after all. Something made up by the guys in the office, or even an external prank that Bob had been hired to get involved in. Maybe I would find it going viral on YouTube and it would be shown in a couple of days' time. Or perhaps it wasn't a joke, but simply a mistake. Maybe all I had seen was a trick of the light, just the creation of a tired mind that hadn't gotten enough sleep. It was incredibly dark in the video, after all. I could easily have seen something that wasn't there. And after a while, I built up the courage to watch the thing again. I decided the only way to check for sure was to study the footage, even if it was the last thing that I wanted to do. But that was when I encountered my first problem. The file wouldn't open anymore. And I tried to open it with a bunch of different applications, but each time it gave me an error message. The thing had been corrupted. Looking back, I should have called the police then and there. It all might have been a joke or a mistake, but at least they could have gone looking into it for me. I didn't, though. Maybe because it would have made the situation feel too real. I don't know. But in the end, all I did was email Bob, asking him to call me back ASAP. And then I rang his number and I left a message saying the same thing. And then I waited and I waited. And by the time that it was getting dark, I made a deal with myself. If Bob didn't get in touch with me that evening, the first thing that I would do the next morning would be to make 2 calls, one to the police and one to my editor. After I decided that, I felt a tiny bit better. Then I watched TV for a while and I went to bed. I slept badly. I can't remember what I dreamed, but I do remember half waking at several points in the night, feeling afraid and disoriented, unsure where I even was. When I woke up finally, light was streaming in through the window. I hurried to my laptop and I went straight to my emails, scrolled frantically past the usual junk. It was towards the bottom that I found it, another email from Bob with an attachment. It had been several hours now since I opened the JPEG contained in that email, several hours that I had spent feeling the worst combination of feelings that I had ever felt in my life. My stomach and my head are a mess. I've got nerves swirling through me and uncertainty. Confusion too. But mostly it's the fear. The same paralyzing sense of fear that I imagined Bob felt when he saw the eyeless woman looming over him in the dark. The image in the email showed a close-up of a clock. The quality was grainy, but it was clear enough for me to make out the time. 3:13. Now that wasn't the part that scared me, though. That wasn't the part that filled me with a sense of dread that I haven't been able to shake since. The thing that did was the fact that I recognized the clock. I recognized it straight away. Not from the video that I'd seen at Bob's house either. I recognized it from the wall on my very own kitchen. Whoever had taken that photo had been in my house.
Is the recorder on? I don't see the red light. Wait. Oh, okay. I see it now. Sorry. I'm a little nervous. Look, Bob always seemed like a decent enough guy. He was a little quiet, sure, but very friendly. Working as an accountant at an insurance company isn't the most exciting job in the world and doesn't tend to attract the most exciting people either. We didn't know well enough, though, even though he'd been there about a decade. His office was pretty sterile. No picture of a wife, or a husband for that matter. No pictures of children, and he never shared personal details about his life. Everyone in the office would invite him to birthday parties or potlucks at lunch, but he just stayed at his office. He'd at his desk every day as far back as I can remember. A bologna sandwich, bottle of water, and half a banana. Never deviated from his routine. Seemed like a good enough guy, though. Mr. Applegate, our manager, he was less pleasant. He was a micromanager if I ever met one. No detail of a project was too small for him to scrutinize. The guy would rip you to shreds in a meeting for the smallest error. Everyone walked on eggshells around him. I don't think that anyone deserved what happened to him, though. During an afternoon meeting, Mr. Applegate was lecturing the staff about the importance of double-checking all financial documents for final submission. Our error percentage on financial reports last month had increased from 1% to 1.5%. In our favor, mind you, but that was besides the point to Mr. Applegate. And who do we have to thank for making us look like a cluster of morons to the head office? Mr. Applegate asked us dramatically. Bob Brooks, accountant extraordinaire. Stand up, Bob, so we can give you a round of applause for sending out the wrong numbers. I remember Bob stood up hesitantly as Mr. Applegate clapped loudly. But no one else joined him. We just felt bad for Bob. We'd all taken our share of insults over the years, but we'd never seen Mr. Applegate go after Bob. Sometime in March, Mr. Applegate stopped showing up to work. He was out of the blue. He had worked there for over 20 years, and you could set your watch by the time that he walked in the door each day. But things went on as usual for a few days. It became clear that he wasn't coming back. He ignored every phone call or email sent his way. A rep from corporate stopped by at the end of the week and called Bob into the conference room. The rep had decided that Bob would be our intern manager until the position was filled. Most of us were indifferent. He wasn't anyone's friend, but no one disliked him. And to our surprise, Bob was a fantastic manager. The office ran more smoothly than ever. Productivity was up, and we weren't being micromanaged. Bob stayed in his office most of the day, unless you needed something specific, which wasn't often. He took care of the corporate side of things, and we took care of the day-to-day operations. It was nice, really. And at the end of the last quarter, Bob surprised us with a big announcement. According to the main office, our numbers are the highest in the state. You've all done excellent work. As a reward, we will all have a barbecue in the empty field beside the parking lot. I'll put a sign-up sheet on the break room door for sides and drinks, but I'll bring the main course. And so with that, that's when he went back to his office. The day the cookout arrived, and we all met in the field at the end of the day. A few more of those folding tables sat out on the edge of the parking lot by the field covered with food. Casseroles and dips, things like that. And there was Bob, standing behind the grill cooking steaks and smiling happy to himself. We all ate until we thought that we would be sick. I'll be damned if that wasn't how it turned out. Anyway, to the part that you want to know. We had finished packing up from the barbecue. Bob sat in front of me at the exit onto the main road. I guess he didn't see the car coming when he pulled out, and the red Jeep clipped the back of his van, knocking him to the back door and sending his white cooler crashing to the ground. That's when I saw it. Couldn't tell exactly what it was at first. There's some leftover steaks from the cookout scattered on the road. I thought they were steaks anyway. Shit. Feel sick thinking about it. That's when I saw the hand sticking out of the cooler. Before I could register what I was looking at, Bob peeled away in his damaged van, leaving the cooler behind. I don't know why the hell I got out and looked, but I did. Already told your officers my fingerprints would be on the lid of the cooler. Because I lifted the lid, and that's when the arm rolled out. And inside were, I guess, the rest of the pieces of Mr. Applegate. The parts that we didn't eat at the cookout. I could hear screaming after I opened the lid, but it took me a few seconds to realize that I was the one shrieking, you know? I ain't never seen a dead body. Shit, I mean, I have, you know. I got a funeral, but not like that. It scared me more than anything I've ever seen. I don't know why he did it. Applegate was an asshole, but no one deserves that. Have you found him yet?
Tonight, you're going to come face to face with a serial killer, one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history. They don't usually talk to reporters, and in the 45 years of 60 Minutes, we've never interviewed one until now. He'd never spoken publicly about his crimes, never tried to explain why he did it, or even express remorse to the families of victims when he finally faced them in court.
I've been considering this interview for a long time. For weeks, I debated even allowing it to take place. After that, I pondered the direction that I would allow it to take. You see, it has been decades since I've allowed myself a decision without meticulous calculation. Emotions outside of the realm of serving myself have always been a foreign notion to me. But I learned how to emulate them early on, which obviously contributed to my success. Before I carry on, I should mention that the conclusions that I reached in regards to all of these cameras, including the resigning of my personal facade, after all, my friend, I have been incarcerated and I am hours from leaving this plane. I think I've earned the chance to learn what vulnerability feels like. But I digress. I'll spare you most of the early life biography. It really isn't that captivating. It unfolds as you would expect in a young psychopath. I found myself able to quickly analyze information at a tender age, but struggle with things as simple as a facial expression. I had almost unstoppable urges to kill animals and start fires, sometimes simultaneously. I wet the bed past the age that it was acceptable. Yes, the trifecta that would make any psychiatrist balk. My parents, astonishingly, did a sufficient job at keeping my atrocities a secret. My country bumpkin instructors wrote my cold behavior off as a phase that I would eventually grow out of. Really, I was fortunate in that my childhood was less trying compared to others with my condition. Anyhow, not being forced to contend with quack pediatric psychologists allowed my teenage curiosities to take hold. It was obvious that I wasn't like everyone else. I started there, researching my own intellectuality and consequently further developing my niche for analytics, cause, and effect. I found this convenient, as my advanced ability to foresee consequences kept my hormonally driven desires from converting me into a meandering Neanderthal. My cold demeanor put off most female prospects, and so I often considered simply taking what I wanted. But as I mentioned, consequences forbade my desire for conquest. I'll pause a moment while you cope with the fact that I'm not a repressed homosexual. Moving on, I suppose. There came a day in the late 1970s, just before I entered college, that I found the maiming of animals no longer satisfied. Fittingly, I began to consider the prospect of performing my atrocities on humans. You may find it odd that I never shrank from the concept. I simply realized that to do so would require extensive preparation if I were to remain a free man. The university allowed me time to construct my feigned humanity, and while I double majored in psychology and chemistry, I attended the theater, constantly comparing the thespian's performance to the reviews in the papers, deciphering which expressions were conceiving and so on. I took human anatomy as an elective, devouring information so efficiently that I impressed many of my professors. I will conclude this portion of the revelation that my first murder came in my third year of undergraduate. I simply could not bottle my thirst for blood any longer. Needless to say, it was sloppy and rudimentary. But I improved rapidly via repetition and revision. Eventually, and after a few close calls, I began to savor the juncture at which my victim's expiration became imminent. Their pleading and desperation giving me further insight into the spectrum of despair, hopelessness, as well as regret. Most of what I did between the years of 1978 and 1982 is now a matter of public record. I avoid the senseless and unraveling spire that you see out-of-control criminals initiate in film. I got out of the scientific field and into the real estate business, as sitting in a lab all day wasn't conducive to meeting potential victims. I found some entertainment value in predicting the market. Little did I know how wonderful this decision would be. I quickly became bored with simply murdering one person at a time. I wanted to broaden my horizons, so to speak, so I was a little short in regards to abstract creativity. But then came the Tylenol incident. Oh, and it was a revelation. Anyone familiar with pharmaceuticals knows that tamper-resistant packaging was a direct result of still anonymous individual who placed cyanide randomly in Tylenol packets in 1982. 7 people met their demise. But you know that already, don't you? My first reaction was one of jealousy, knowing that I could never be so original. And so I decided that I would do it better. And by the time that I finalized my plan, cameras and pharmacies were already on the rise. The aforementioned packaging was becoming more and more prominent. But I was not discouraged. I had already prepared for the need to frame some poor schmuck. And that person turned out to be Stella Nickel. I learned from the public data on her previous convictions that she was a prime candidate for framing. And through observation, I learned that her relationship with her husband was so rocky that if I were to make him a victim, she would certainly be a suspect. All it took was a trace of algicide from her aquarium and some strategic planting of what I must say was some exquisitely produced cyanide and a few Excedrin bottles. In the end, I didn't get to my casualty goal of 5, but 2 was still better than what I had achieved at that point. And so I moved to a different area of the country and let my work come to fruition for the next few years in court. Nicole went to prison for 90 years for something that she hadn't done but wished that she had. Had I been capable of guilt, I predict that I would have felt minimal amounts. I began planning my next masterpiece in 1984, stemming my desires with the simpler one-at-a-time method at which I had become so proficient. An early fascination of mine was the Zodiac Killer. Everyone knows the story, so I'll spare you the recount. I had spent what little leisure time I had in late college studying his letters, and although they confounded me, I viewed this less as a failure and more so as a homage. He or she was famous, but anonymous. Credits without the consequences. My highest aspiration. Heriberto Seda was the next subject of my discreet visitation. He was an interesting fellow, yet troubled, and once again he had various qualities that made him an easy scapegoat. He shared my fascination with the Zodiac Killer and also, like me, had aspired to mimic him. Yet he was embarrassingly sloppy and therefore the circumstances were easy to manipulate. I watched from afar as he failed to murder 2 victims, and then I proceeded to kill 3 in his name as he continued to allow other victims to live. I would venture to say that his setup was an easier task than Nikel's. I wrote 2 anonymous letters with a similar style to the original Zodiacs, which, to my dismay, was initially dismissed as a hoax. But Seda was eventually caught in 1996, and his desire for notoriety was so that he even confessed to the 3 murders that I had committed. And I was elated. Let's take a break, shall we? Surely you are curious as to what happened to my victims interspersed between my more infamous bloodletting. Well, I eventually lost count. But at one point in the late 90s, I was averaging 2 a month. You see, real estate has become such a profitable venture for me that it consumed too much of my time for me to efficiently design anything more grandiose than a bathtub dissection or hairpin-induced exsanguination. I have professed already that I lack the necessary cortex for any variety of respectable creativity. What little expression I did attempt came in the form of a disposal. I put various new twists on dismemberment, scattering parts by mail from multiple postal locations. You remember the panic. And disintegrating them with various concoctions. I buried people with lye and incinerated them slowly while alive. I once allowed myself to lose control and removed someone's head by repeatedly smashing them with a car door. The same vehicle they found in that pond in Boone, North Carolina. Yeah, I'm clearly a monster. But to maintain any semblance of what I considered happiness, I had to constantly become more extravagant. Much like one's taste in pornography, I had to constantly become more grotesque to achieve the desired effect. And meanwhile, I became a multi-millionaire. I didn't truly care. Murder didn't cost much at its base, but my access to the superfluous allowed me to constantly experiment with more elaborate methods. There are few things on Earth that are more enjoyable than disposing of someone on your yacht and then enjoying a $10,000 bottle of red in the middle of the Atlantic. But again, I digress. In the early 2000s, I found myself idolizing Jack the Ripper. I found myself fancying our similarities. Anonymous, multiple victims, acknowledgeable in autonomy. I turned control of the day-to-day reality over to an associate who had been kissing my ass for a decade in order to permit myself to a plan. And by 2008, I was ready. Derek Brown was yet another idolizer, much like the aforementioned Sadar. Regrettably, he had previous convictions regarding rape and had been a suspect in other murder. And what's more, he lived in a Whitechapel area, where prostitution was still prominent. I chose 2 women and kept them sedated in one of my estate's basements for several days while I ascertained access to Brown's apartment. I waited for him to depart alone, preventing any sort of alibi, and brought both women into his bathroom. I remember injecting both of them with a compound similar to midazolam as I returned to the car that I had stolen for my tools. I had, over time, purchased a set of what would have been surgical tools in the 19th century, but once I decided to be authentic. I proceeded to dismember both women, being as incautious as possible with their fluids, and then spent time in the apartment as I lived there. Then I left without my tools or tidying up. It didn't take long for the local authorities to interview Brown and search his apartment. In his panic upon discovering that his flat had been used for something grisly, he elected to cut out the carpet and have the walls repainted. Obviously, this was a mistake. As Brown became a convicted murderer, I came upon a seminal moment. I never thought that it could happen, but serial killing was, well, monotonous. I actually tried giving it up for a few months. During my self-prescribed abstinence, I came upon a second realization. Given the fact that I hadn't even been suspected of wrongdoing for a quarter century, I deemed it safe to adopt the belief that, in most instances, the illusion of security was present as a deterrent, but little beyond. I decided in 2012 that domestic terrorism would likely satiate my desire for something more. The concept seemed simple enough. Slip something into a large gathering of some variety. A sporting event would suffice, as there were always hired guards, but usually nothing to intimidate the more dedicated. Even if I were exposed, I could brutalize my way in and be gone just as the explosion destroyed any evidence of my being there. I could easily alter my appearance for any cameras, and my extensive resume in the chemical field only added confidence. And my downfall, in the end, was my lack of respect for the upper levels of federal law enforcement. The locals were of no consequence, but the digital age had infiltrated all aspects of discretion. Despite my utilization of several reliable back channels, 2 of my acquisitions were flagged by the CIA. 3 days before my plan came to fruition, a team of operatives entered one of my residences in Aspen and apprehended me. Thus my reign as the world's most sophisticated savage came to an end. Surely you can appreciate my run. Not a soul knew that I was an active serial killer for over 30 years. The trial only revealed half of what I had done, and it was more than enough to imprison me here. Yet my desire to kill persisted, and I have no intention of opposing it. And speaking of resistance, did you notice that the guards have been gone for some time? Of course not. You are under the impression that I adore the sound of my own voice, and I am well aware of how numbingly captivating my story is, especially to a sensationalizing muckrake like you. But right now, they're busy ensuring my escape, and being made handsomely for it. And so, after I end you here on national television, I will again go back to the shade and flourish.
Channel 17 News reports Chicago, April 21st, 2017. Police were immediately alerted today as 33 bodies of currently unidentified young men were found in an abandoned storage unit in downtown Chicago. The unit was headed for auction due to delinquent payments, and the victims were discovered upon opening to the auctioneer. Authorities have confirmed that a note card with the name Gacy printed on it was found at the scene, perhaps indicating a copycat of the infamous serial killer. We will, of course, keep you updated with any further developments. Morning broadcast of Salt Lake City, Utah, October 29th, 2017. A pair of runners in Liberty Park discovered a third female body with a Bundy note card earlier this morning. Police have a press conference planned for later today regarding details and are encouraging citizens not to panic as they pursue the copycat. Connections are also being investigated between the murders here in Salt Lake and the unsolved Gacy copycat murders in Chicago earlier this year. Associated Press, editorial excerpt, Wichita, Kansas, February 4th, 2018. National panic is sure to ensure as yet another set of assumed Winters copycat killings have been discovered, this time with note cards reading BTK, likely in reference to Dennis Rader, who was caught and convicted for 10 murders spanning 2 decades in 2005. Gabriel Winters, who gained in notoriety several years ago while standing trial for dozens of murders, has been eluding authorities for nearly 3 years after the gruesome murder of Joseph Artwell on live television, followed by his guard-aided escape. Many involved in these events have been captured and incarcerated, but the intricacies of Winters' plan have yet to be unraveled. Although savage, Winters has proven cunning, and his apparent access to large amounts of currency will likely make capture difficult.